Well, good morning. Thank you for braving this weather. I am so pleasantly surprised at the size of this audience today. It speaks a lot for your perseverance to get through the mud puddles and for the importance of this event. My name is Gary Gregg, and I'm the director of the McConnell Center. It's been my privilege to direct this center for the last 18 years, and I see a lot of familiar faces. I thank you all for coming out today. Madam Provost, Board of Trustees members, McConnell Center Board, lots of people in the audience today deserve some recognition. I'm just going to call out one small group that we have with us today because they are the future in so many ways, and particularly the future of the United States Army. It's my privilege to be able to help host today here with us the cadre of the U of L ROTC and a group of their cadets. Folks, would you stand and be recognized, please? Thank you. This is the 52nd major speaker to visit the McConnell Center in our history. I think I've introduced 40 some of them over the years. We've had Colin Powell's first major policy address as Secretary of State. We had Secretary of State Clinton immediately after important negotiations on Russian armaments. We've had Clarence Thomas and Vice President Biden and Neil Gorsuch, and you name them. But I am particularly excited today because I get to introduce for the very first time a woman that has come here just a few months ago and has shaken up the University of Louisville and provided an excitement that I haven't seen in years here at U of L. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise and help me welcome for her first McConnell Center event, President Neeli Bendapudi, Scott Jennings, CIA Director Haspel, and your Senior Senator, Mitch McConnell.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. You get an A+ from this professor. It's an honor, truly, to host such distinguished guests today. And it's deeply rewarding to know that their careers began right here. Students, they were on the University of Louisville campus just as you are here today. Many of you have heard me say that higher education transforms lives and communities. I am so proud that at the University of Louisville, we create leaders who impact not just their communities, but the nation and indeed the world. Many times people will say, I'm about to introduce somebody who needs no introduction. And a lot of times that's hyperbole. But today I'm pleased to say it definitely is not. I get to introduce to you somebody who truly needs no introduction anywhere in the country, but especially here in Louisville. I get the pleasure and the honor of introducing to you Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He is the longest-serving Senate Republican leader in the history of the United States. He was first elected to the Senate in 1984. He's only the second Kentuckian ever to hold that post. His colleagues elected him unanimously to that position in 2014 and again in 2016. His roles include senior member of the Appropriations, Agriculture, and Rules Committees. Before his election as a senator, he put his talents to work right here in Louisville, where he was judge executive for Jefferson County. But before he did any of that, he came to the U of L in the 60s, majored in politics in the College of Arts and Sciences. He was U of L student body president in the College of Arts and Sciences. He attended another Kentucky-based university for law school, but I guess we can forgive him for that. Senator, what can I say? I just am so broad-minded, and I believe in the redemption of souls. His many contributions to the U of L, and there are very many, I'm only mention a couple, include establishment of the McConnell Center in 1991, an institution that offers tremendous educational opportunities and has given hundreds of students, talented Kentuckians that would have gone elsewhere but for the McConnell Scholars Program. This program really attracts and graduates some of our best and brightest. McConnell Scholars have earned some of the highest accolades in the world, including Truman Fellowships, Fulbright Scholarships. They also tend to be student body leaders right here on our campus. So Senate Majority Leader, I can't say Mitch, my notes say Mitch, but I'm just gonna say Senator McConnell, we are so very pleased to call you a U of L Cardinal, and we are so honored to invite you to speak here today. Thank you,
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for braving the rain and being here with us today. Dr. Benaputi, we're so grateful you're here. What a terrific new leader we have just when we needed one. And I know you join me in thanking her for choosing U of L. So energetic, so enthusiastic, and a great leader, and we're so glad you're here. And I would also say, as a alumnus, I'm proud to say you have become quite the expert in throwing the L. In fact, we were doing some photographs before we came in here. She corrected my L. Also want you to know what an extraordinary job Gary Gregg has done as leader of this program. Started in 1991, but I never thought it could be as fulsome, as important as it's become under Gary Gregg's leadership. And Gary, I can never thank you enough for all you've done. There's another familiar face up here today, Scott Jennings. After his time as a McConnell Scholar, Scott has gone on to quite a successful career, founded his own public relations firm, became a cable news contributor, CNN. He has to send me his stuff so I'll see it. So we're lucky to have him this morning to lead this discussion. He's not the only alum we can be proud of. From last year's graduating class alone, 5 students earned prestigious international scholarships and are studying across the globe. And throughout its history, the program's 250-plus alumni have entered a wide range of fields, taking with them the skills they learned right here. I also want to recognize, again, you don't need to stand up again, but we're extremely proud of this military program that Gary landed from the U.S. Army, and you already had an opportunity to meet those folks earlier in the program. We're certainly grateful for their service to the nation. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest, who happens, as all of you know, to be a native of Ashland. She spent her entire career in service to our nation. However, before President Trump nominated her to be the first female director of the Central Intelligence Agency, most Americans obviously didn't know anything about Gina. She'd made few public appearances. Most of her life had been spent in the shadows. Maybe most unbelievable to the young people here, Gina didn't even have a Twitter account. So as the Senate considered her nomination to lead the CIA, our country had the opportunity to learn more about her. We learned about her impressive career as an intelligence officer spanning more than 3 decades. We heard some interesting facts, such as how she keeps a cardboard cutout of Johnny Cash in her office as a symbol of American individualism. But I found one aspect of her biography rather shocking. This will shock you too. Although Director Haspel graduated from the University of Louisville, she now calls herself a UK basketball fan. I'm sure she'll explain that in the conversation I'm not sure how she kept her allegiance to the Wildcats a secret during her time here at U of L, but it clearly prepared her for a career in the clandestine services. So, Gina is, in fact, the consummate intelligence officer with service at the CIA during both the Cold War and the global war on terror. She is uniquely prepared to respond to any threat our nation may face. After 7 field tours of duty, including several as chief of station, her unrivaled expertise is helping secure America's position on the world stage. Just a short recitation of her career reads like it's straight out of a spy thriller. She's disrupted enemy networks. She's recruited assets in the field and captured dangerous terrorists. She even survived an overseas coup d'etat. Because of her brilliance, Gina has been awarded the Intelligence Medal of Merit, a Presidential Rank Award, the Donovan Award, and the George H.W. Bush Award for Excellence in Counterterrorism. Gina has never been one to back down from the toughest missions. Like so many of us, she remembers exactly where she was on September the 11th, 2001, having just returned to Washington after an overseas mission. Gina saw our country come under attack. And like so many other patriots, she leapt into action. She volunteered to join the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, spent the next 3 years working around the clock to track down the culprits. For their service in those moments, our nation's heroes, including Gina Haspel, deserve our greatest respect. In addition to her distinction as the first woman to ever lead the CIA, she is also the first Kentuckian to serve in that role. Her passion for the agency and for the brave men and women she leads is unsurpassed. We can all sleep better at night knowing that she and her colleagues are on the job keeping our country safe. And Kentucky can be proud to have one of our own at the helm. Now, the director will come to the podium to share her observations. Then she'll sit down with Scott for a conversation about the important issues facing our country. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to welcome the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, Gina Haspel.
Good morning. It's a rare pleasure to be back home in Kentucky and truly a privilege to be back on this campus. I want to thank Senator McConnell and President Bendapudi for the gracious invitation. And I want to thank all of you for being here today and for taking an interest in our nation's security and in the role CIA plays in protecting our country. In the interest of full disclosure, and as Senator McConnell mentioned, I should tell you that my college years weren't spent entirely in Louisville. Like Senator McConnell, I spent some of my time in college at a well-known university over in central Kentucky. But after finishing my junior year, the bright lights of this beautiful city beckoned, and I finished my degree as a cardinal, proudly so. Because I am a proud Kentuckian and a proud U of L graduate, it is very special for me to be with you today. I look forward to speaking with Scott a little later, but before I do, I'd like to offer some brief remarks about the remarkable organization I am honored to lead, the Central Intelligence Agency. Over the summer, we hosted a special guest at Langley. Daniel Craig was kind enough to visit CIA headquarters to talk about playing James Bond and how it compares to the real world of espionage. And yes, he parked his red Aston Martin right in front of our main lobby, which raises a couple of big contrasts between real-world espionage and the Hollywood version. First, if you're an undercover officer endeavoring not to be noticed, a red Aston Martin probably is not the way to go. I'd go with a beige Hyundai. Second, the average CIA officer can only dream of parking right in front of the main lobby. Even I can't do that. But whatever the real CIA lacks in Hollywood glamour, it more than makes up for it in job satisfaction. Service at CIA is the opportunity to be part of something bigger than yourself, to serve your country in a meaningful and compelling way. As one of my favorite former directors, George Tenet, used to say, CIA doesn't do easy. The hard jobs come to us. CIA officers take on the toughest assignments at some risk for the sake of our nation. From my first days in the clandestine service and my first overseas assignment in Africa, the meaning of our work was clear to me. My training prepared me well for a moonless night in a remote and desolate place when I conducted my first meeting with a foreign agent. He passed me intelligence of great value to our government, and I passed him a little extra money for the men he led. It was the beginning of an adventure I could only have dreamed of as a kid. And now that I think about it, that night was the stuff of movies. It's fair to say that CIA back then in the late 80s and 90s was a thoroughly male-dominated organization. But I was lucky to have bosses who were willing to take a chance on me. One of them was a tough, old-school baron who picked me to serve as chief of station in a small but crucial frontier post. After my appointment was announced, a couple guys who had been in the running for the job weren't very pleased. And one told me to my face that he couldn't believe, that he couldn't understand why I, as a woman, had been chosen to go to a place like that. So while I could have done without the many long nights I spent sleeping on the floor of my small station, that assignment surpassed even the imaginings of a Hollywood screenwriter. I was proud of the fact that we captured 2 major terrorists and conducted a counterproliferation operation against a nation-state bad actor that went our way. I managed to do well as an operations officer, and I did what I could to help bring down some of the barriers I had faced. I'm also proud of a lot of other women who have risen through the ranks at CIA, especially since the 9/11 attacks. The agency really has become a better place to work for all its officers over the years, even though, like others, we still have a way to go. So it should come as no surprise that one of my top priorities since becoming director has been to champion diversity and inclusion at CIA. Our global mission at CIA demands that we recruit and retain America's best and brightest, regardless of gender, race, or cultural background. And I want every officer to have equal opportunities to succeed. Another strategic priority is to invest more heavily in collecting against the hardest issues. Our efforts against these difficult intelligence gaps have been overshadowed over the years by the intelligence community's justifiably heavy emphasis on counterterrorism in the wake of 9/11. Groups such as the so-called Islamic State and Al-Qaeda remain squarely in our sights, but we are sharpening our focus on nation-state adversaries. Closely related to the renewed emphasis on raising our investment against the most strategic intelligence gaps is our push to steadily increase the number of officers stationed overseas. That's where our mission as a foreign intelligence agency lies, and having a larger foreign footprint allows for a more robust posture. We're also investing in foreign language excellence as a core attribute for our officers. We're strengthening our language training to ensure that our people are more capable and better attuned to the cultures in which they operate. By the way, I recall very fondly first-class French literature classes at University of Louisville. And we're building stronger partnerships at CIA, not only with our sister agencies across the IC, but with our foreign counterparts as well. Teamwork is the only effective way of dealing with the range of complex threats we face across the globe, and CIA is working more closely than ever with our allies across the world. Finally, no foreign challenge has had a more direct and devastating impact on American families and communities, including right here in Kentucky, than the flow of opioids and other drugs into our country. That's why CIA is going to invest more heavily in our counter-narcotics effort abroad to combat this terrible threat, one that has killed far more Americans than any terrorist group ever has. In the lobby of our headquarters building in Langley, Virginia, there's an inscription from the book of John, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." It's a reference to CIA's core mission, collecting the most accurate and timely intelligence to help policymakers protect our country and advance American interest across the world. Finding the truth means operating against despotic governments and terrorist groups that fiercely and violently guard their secrets. It's complicated, risky work. But as I said, we don't do easy. The hard jobs come to CIA. Within the intelligence community, CIA is the keeper of the human intelligence mission. Technical forms of collection are vital, but a good human source is unique and can deliver decisive intelligence on our adversaries' secrets, even their intent. CIA is also the lead agency for all-source intelligence analysis. The assessments drafted by our analysts based on classified and open-source information. Much of the President's daily brief consists of CIA collection and analysis. And very often, the President relies on us to act as America's first line of defense. We're first in, collecting intelligence, moving ahead of the military, going where others can't go, and doing things that no one else can. These are the sorts of activities that fall under the heading of covert action. Our work requires secrecy, and secrecy in turn requires a profound degree of trust from the American people. Nothing is more important to those of us at CIA than our obligation to earn the trust of our fellow citizens. That's why our agency abides by and embraces an oversight structure that includes the Congressional Intelligence Committees, the FISA Court, and our own independent Inspector General. There's not another major intelligence agency in the world subject to oversight authority as comprehensive as our own, but that's as it should be. It's what makes us accountable to the open society we serve. It's what makes us an American intelligence service. In carrying out every aspect of our work, CIA officers are guided by a professional ethos that is the sum of our abiding principles, core values, and highest aspirations. These include service, integrity, excellence, courage, teamwork, and stewardship. Sacrifice, too, is an inescapable part of our mission. 129 men and women at CIA have died in the line of duty since our founding in 1947. My first boss in the field was killed in 1993 after volunteering for an assignment in a very dangerous and unstable place. He was brilliant, witty, and courageous, a lovely man who always wore cowboy boots and spoke excellent Russian and Turkish. He was an inspiration to me and to everyone who served with him, and I think of him frequently. Of the 129 heroes represented by a star on our memorial wall at our headquarters, 42 have perished since September 11th, 2001. The vast majority of them were lost fighting the long war against al-Qaeda. They include Johnny Michael Spann, a brave former Marine and the first American to die in the line of duty in Afghanistan. They also include a dear friend of mine, a devoted wife and mother of 3 who was one of our greatest al-Qaeda experts. She was utterly determined to pursue the terrorists who attacked our country, even if it meant putting herself in harm's way. People often ask CIA directors what keeps them up at night. Between rogue weapons of mass destruction programs, cyber threats, terrorist organizations, great power rivalries, and other global threats, there's bound to be more than a single reason I'm losing sleep on any given night. But I'd like to share with you a story I keep in mind when things get tough. I served in Africa early in my career, and one day a group of us, largely diplomats, set out to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Our guide was a wonderful man, a diplomat himself, who had been born at the base of the mountain. His approach was simple: 3 days up, 2 days down. As we made our way up the mountain, we were passed by a group of security officials from a third country who clearly hadn't done their homework. They were in their prime, but overconfident and ascending far too quickly. In the end, they had to be stretchered off the mountain. But our guide prepared us well for our journey. As we moved up in altitude, he would say again and again in Swahili, "Pole pole," slowly, slowly. Following this advice, many of us made it to the summit safely. The view was unforgettable, and I will never forget the leadership example of our guide. While others tried to make their way up by brute force, he showed us there is no substitute for patience and expertise. Pole pole. I try to remember those words when faced with a difficult challenge. They remind me that in every pursuit, the tough climbs take patience, courage, creativity, and relentless determination. CIA officers have those qualities in abundance. I couldn't be prouder to lead them. And for those of you who aspire to serve your country, take it from your fellow Kentuckian. Prepare yourself with a good education and don't do easy. Raise your hand when the hard jobs come to you. That alone will take you most of the way to the top. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director Haspel, for joining us on campus today for your first ever event outside of the swamp. You left one swamp and came to another one today. I'd like to start this conversation where you started, in Ashland, Kentucky. You were born there in 1956. Can you tell us a little bit about your family upbringing in East Kentucky? What was that like?
Thank you, Scott. Yes, my roots go back to Eastern Kentucky, both sides of the family. I was born in Ashland. The family comes from Morgan County out in Eastern Kentucky and the area, Boyd County and the surrounding counties. But my dad joined the Air Force when he was very young, so we ended up following him to postings all over the world, and we spent a lot of time overseas. I went to high school in England, in the United Kingdom, and I think that exposure to foreign cultures and foreign languages is one of the things that ultimately drove me to a career at the Central Intelligence Agency. But I'm very proud of my Kentucky roots, and I'm very proud to be a Kentuckian.
I want to talk to you about your dad. I heard a story that you once told him, and as you mentioned, he was in the military, that you wanted to go to West Point. How did that conversation go?
Well, I'm dating myself, but I was in boarding school in England when my dad was posted to an Air Force base in the United Kingdom. and I was trying to decide where I was going to go to college, and I thought I had an inspired idea. So I came home one weekend, and I told him that I had decided that I wanted to go to West Point, and I thought he would be very pleased with that decision. But I could tell from the look on his face that something was amiss, and so my dad had to break it to me that women weren't allowed in those days to go to West Point. That didn't happen for another couple of years. So I was a bit disappointed. So ultimately we decided that I would come home to Kentucky, but I think maybe fate intervened because ultimately, again, it was one of the things that set me on the path to the CIA where I probably was a better fit.
So you came back here and graduated from college and had a couple of things to do before you joined the CIA. Obviously, you engaged at some point in some sort of a recruitment opportunity. We're on a campus today. There may be interested parties here. Tell us, in your mind today, what makes for a good CIA officer? What are you looking for when you're out recruiting today?
I think first and foremost, we're looking for people who are dedicated to serving their country, who see that as part of their future. And we're looking for people who can communicate well, both orally and in written communication. But I think it's important to know that it's not only the things you see in movies. We do obviously recruit for operations officers in the clandestine service. We have a large cadre of wonderful analysts at CIA. But we also have lots of other occupations that you would find in any large organization. We have accountants, we have lawyers, we have scientists, engineers, data scientists, cyber experts. We have a very fine cadre of paramilitary officers. So if you're interested in serving your country, if that appeals to you, CIA can offer a rewarding career in a lot of different fields.
And you mentioned languages. You stressed that in your remarks. I understand you speak several. How many do you speak?
Well, my Turkish is the language that I claim to have any competency in at this point, but I have studied a few over the years, including Russian.
Are there any languages in your all's recruitment efforts today that you find particularly valuable if someone were looking to study one today?
Yes, absolutely. We maintain a list of critical languages. We're very interested in people who can bring advanced proficiency in Arabic, in Chinese, in Farsi, in Turkish. But frankly, we also have a need for good French speakers. The Francophone Africa comes to mind in addition to France itself. We need good Spanish speakers. So if you're proficient in a foreign language, we're probably interested in talking to you.
And let me ask you about mid-career people. For those who are often doing other things but have always thought perhaps maybe they wanted to do some kind of public service, is it common for the CIA to pluck folks out of, say, a corporate environment or some other maybe university environment in the middle of their career to come inside?
It's increasingly common. When I joined, we didn't do so much of that, and I think we've learned that people who've been working in the private sector or in the field of education have a lot to offer, and so we're doing a much better job at recruiting individuals mid-career and then offering them a rewarding career at CIA.
Would like to ask you about the typical day for the director of the CIA. What can you tell us about your new routine as the director? Are you modeling what you do each day based on a previous director, or are you charting a new path based on your own particular style?
Well, I've had the privilege and honor to work with quite a number of CIA directors, and I probably have learned something from all of them. But I've been at CIA many years, over 30 years, so I'm pretty comfortable with how I see my role. The days start early and go long, but it's an absolute privilege to be there every day. I start the day with quite a large binder. I could read my material on an iPad, but I prefer hard copy. Probably reflects the generation I come from. But it's a leather-bound binder, and it's full of the intelligence that our officers have collected overnight all over the globe. We have quite an extensive global network. It also includes imagery from our colleagues at the National Geospatial Agency. signals intelligence from our colleagues at the National Security Agency. All of that is in a binder, and it's very important that I spend my first hour or so reading that material because it informs my meetings throughout the day, informs my briefings of other senior U.S. government officials, and helps with the decisions that I have to make throughout the day. After that preparation, I am several times a week part of the briefing team that goes into the Oval Office to present to the President our most important intelligence. I accompany the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, and of course, National Security Advisor Bolton attends those sessions as well.
Let me ask you about your perspective on running the agency and going through this routine. Coming from the perspective of a career officer, do you think that changes your outlook on this day-to-day activity versus someone who comes into the agency with more of a political background like your predecessor had?
Well, I will say that Mike Pompeo had a real natural instinct for intelligence work. But I do think, having served at CIA for 33 years, I have a deep and profound understanding of our mission and a deep understanding of our workforce. I'm a bit prejudiced, but I think we have the best workforce in government, so it's an absolute privilege to lead those men and women at CIA.
I want to talk to you for a moment about athletic equipment. What was going through your mind when Vladimir Putin handed your boss the soccer ball in Helsinki?
Well, as you know, Russia had just hosted the World Cup, so I think it was meant to be a gesture, but I'm very confident that my brothers over in the Secret Service will have x-rayed that ball.
So as you mentioned, the CIA is probably one of the best known intelligence agencies, or the best known in the world, but you've noted the United States has a constellation of intelligence agencies that exist under various parent organizations. The bureaucracy is much different than it was when you joined. It's changed a lot since 9/11. As the director now, how would you rate our intra-government collaboration, and do you intend to offer ideas on reforming the government's intelligence bureaucracy to make it even more efficient?
I think the intelligence community today is more integrated than it's ever been at any time in history. We have 16 to 17 intelligence agencies, depending on if you include one small agency. And I think the collaboration between those agencies is extremely strong. And I think all of the leaders in the U.S. intelligence community understand that in order to be successful against the complex threats we face, those partnerships, those intra-agency partnerships, have to be very, very strong. That was a priority for Mike Pompeo and me. Partnerships remains one of my priorities. The partnership with DoD is extremely important. We couldn't have a stronger partnership with those commanders and with Secretary Mattis. It couldn't be better than it is today, but we work at it very hard, and I think everyone understands that that has to be as strong as it possibly can be.
And over your career, you've obviously, we've all lived through various world events and national events and political, this, that, or the other. What would you say the morale inside the CIA is today, and how is it different, better or worse, than when you joined the agency?
CIA is a very resilient workforce, and we tend to be extremely mission-focused. So we tend not to pay attention to the political fray in the Capitol. We are very focused on events overseas and our collection mission, our analysis mission, and what we can do about the problems that we face overseas. So I think morale tends to be pretty constant. There was a moment after the collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 90s where I think we went through a bit of an identity crisis. What are we going to focus on now that we've defeated the Soviet Union? But in 1998, the attacks on our 2 embassies in Africa changed that, and I don't think we've ever looked back.
I'd like to take a brief tour of some hot spots that are in the news. I'll start with North Korea. Just a flat question. What is the latest assessment of North Korea's nuclear program, and in your opinion, do they still pose a threat as a nuclear power?
Well, Scott, as you know, 2017 was a very difficult year where North Korea conducted an unprecedented level of testing. They conducted a major nuclear test. They claimed it was a thermonuclear device. They conducted an unprecedented number of missile tests, around 24, I believe, including 3 ICBM tests. North Korea, the regime, has spent decades building their nuclear weapons program. They have stated that they believe it is essential to their regime's survival. So I believe that the North Koreans view that their capability as leverage, and I don't think that they want to give it up easily. I will say, however, that there does seem to be a suggestion that Kim Jong-un, Chairman Kim, understands that and wants to take steps to improve the economic plight of the North Korean people. So he has stated that he is interested in and committed to denuclearizing his country. And CIA is working extremely hard to support the administration and Secretary of State Pompeo as they try and figure out a roadmap to make that happen. But I will say that I do think sitting here today in 2018, we're certainly in a better place than we were in 2017 because of the dialogue we've established between our 2 leaders, the President and Chairman Kim Jong-un.
I'm going to move to China. China has been making and announcing that they are going to continue to make serious investments in developing places all over the world. Does it concern you that the Chinese are spending so much time and investment resources in these developing places as we sort of compete with them for world influence?
It's a great question, Scott. China has very significant global ambitions. They want to be the dominant force in the Asia-Pacific region, of course, and unfortunately, I think they're working to diminish U.S. influence in order to advance their own goals in the region. But we do monitor very closely what appears to be an effort to expand their influence beyond their own region in places like Africa, Latin America, the Pacific Islands, South Asia. And we are concerned by some of the tactics they use, offering poor countries investments and loans that perhaps those countries are not going to be able to repay. And we want those countries to be aware of their own sovereignty and how foreign investment in their infrastructure and their national security infrastructure can ultimately compromise their sovereignty. So we pay very close attention to that issue. There are a lot of issues with China, but their global ambitions on the world stage are definitely one of them.
I want to ask you about the Middle East, specifically about Iran. Would you say that the Iranian regime and their proxies are the most destabilizing influence in the region right now?
Scott, I'd like to say up front that the Iranian people, there's an incredible history, a Persian history that is very admirable. And right now, the Iranian people in Iran are suffering. There are very serious economic problems. Their economy has been mismanaged. And so I think it's surprising to me as an intelligence officer, the amount of money Iran is spending in places like Syria to prop up the Assad regime, which has used chemical weapons against its own people several times. The money they're spending to try and maintain and expand their influence in their neighbors' government in Iraq, trying to achieve a government in Baghdad that is beholden to Tehran. Their equipping and training of the Houthis in Yemen, where there is a really tragic humanitarian situation. The Houthis are using that equipment to fire missiles at two of our allies, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. So we are watching very closely Iran's malign activity in the region, and we'd like to push back against that activity so those countries can carve their own courses.
I'd like to ask you for a broad answer here. Would you say that the world today is safer or less safe than when you joined the CIA?
I think when I joined the CIA, the dominant threat was, of course, the Soviet menace, and the entire U.S. government national security apparatus was focused on that threat. But today we have to be more nimble, more agile, and we have to be able to face multiple threats, a very diverse range of threats, from nation-state adversaries like Iran to groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So it's a much more complex threat picture, but I think fundamentally the United States is safe because I think the national security and intelligence community agencies are well-resourced and are focused as they should be on meeting these threats.
All right, you've answered all my longer form questions. When I do these kinds of interviews, I like to go to what I call Scott's famous lightning round. So these are short answer, yes or no type questions. Don't think too hard about it. But let's see how you do. You've lived all over the world. What is your favorite city not in the United States?
I have two competitors, London and Istanbul. I love them both.
What is a recent book you've read, and would you recommend it to this crowd?
You know, I was a little offended by the title, but I eventually, I saw J.D. Vance, I think it was even on CNN, so I made a point to read Hillbilly Elegy, and I thought he did a very fine job. I read a lot of heavy stuff during the day, so when I finally have a few minutes in the evening, I have to confess that I go to the less serious genre, and I'm a big fan of the Scandinavian police procedurals.
All right. What's the last movie you saw, and did you like it?
I saw Red Sparrow, and the reason I saw it is I had read the book, and I have to say that the author, Jason Matthews, was a colleague of mine. He's an eloquent writer. He was a very fine CIA clandestine service officer, and the tradecraft that he puts in his book is the real stuff. Of course, you know, there's a lot of other interesting aspects to his stories that make it, you know, fun to read. But I do recommend it. It's a great read.
Senator McConnell mentioned, and it's been, I think, established that you are a huge Johnny Cash fan. So I'm going to ask you, if you were going to be stranded on a desert island and you could only take one of these two Johnny Cash songs with you, which would it be? Ring of Fire or Folsom Prison Blues?
Ring of Fire.
Okay. A Boy Named Sue or I Walk the Line?
I Walk the Line.
Okay. So I want to ask if you've ever had a celebrity encounter. What's the best celebrity encounter you've ever had, and did they know when they encountered you that you were a CIA agent?
Well, I think it's hard to top the Queen of England. And I was fortunate enough in 2009 to be presented to her as a member of a larger delegation, and the Queen is extremely well briefed, so she knew who I was.
All right, you're allowed to buy one more bottle of Kentucky bourbon that lasts the rest of your life. Which is it?
There are so many great bourbons in Kentucky, and I have to share with you, among my greatest pleasures as director are my relationships with foreign counterparts who come to visit, and I have made it a tradition that when my foreign heads of service visit Langley, Virginia, and sit with me in my office, I send them away with a a bottle of very fine Kentucky bourbon. And we are moving through a number so far, but most recently we gave a bottle of Woodford Reserve.
Some Woodford fans, good. Does the director of the CIA carry a cell phone, or is that something you would not recommend any of us do right now?
I think my security team has a cell phone.
And my follow-up question was, if you ever are if someone puts a cell phone in your hands, do you play games on your cell phone like Candy Crush or Angry Birds, or no?
Well, I'm a baby boomer, so never been there and probably never going to go there.
Okay, so the History Channel shows a lot of alien shows at night. I just want to ask, would you recommend we pay attention to these more closely, or find something else to watch?
Scott, I'm sorry, but I can't discuss classified information.
All right, you wake up in the morning and you grab a newspaper. Which one is it?
I have a great media team, and so they hand me a compilation of all the articles from newspapers across the country. I read them all: Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, The Telegraph. I'm reading all of them, including a lot of foreign press.
All right. Let me set aside your time in the CIA in this time period. If you could wake up tomorrow and be an intelligence officer during any other historical period, when and where would you be?
I'm also a big fan of John le Carré and his George Smiley character, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. So I think I would want to be a CIA officer in either Berlin or Moscow in the 60s at the height of the Cold War.
So you've had a security clearance the vast majority of your life. I want to ask, since becoming director of the CIA, have you learned anything that fundamentally changed what you thought you knew about something?
Oh, yeah, probably every day. That's what we do.
And have you ever, and hearing you say that, I assume I know the answer to this, have you ever had to inform a policymaker about a piece of information that fundamentally changed what they thought they knew about something?
Yeah, it's kind of a standing joke that when we appear in the doorframe, you know, a lot of policymakers say, okay, so what do you guys think? What are the facts? So yes.
All right, last question. I'm going to read some names. Harrison Ford, Christopher Pine, Ben Affleck, John Krasinski, Alec Baldwin. All of these people have portrayed CIA officer Jack Ryan in the movies. From this list, which of these Jack Ryans was CIA agent Gina Haspel most like?
Well, I hope Harrison Ford.
Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the CIA, Gina Haspel.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you.
Really good.
You're
Very
great
good.
to talk to. Thank you.
Scott had all the right questions except one. I'm curious of who you want to play you in the movie.
To give that some thought.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome President Bendapudi again to the podium?
I hope that you all agree that was an incredible opportunity for us to look at this panel and say our alumni. That just gives me goosebumps. I want a number of thank yous, so bear with me here. First of all, I'd like to thank Gary Gregg, the director of the McConnell Center. Please give him a round of applause. Please join me in thanking Senator McConnell for having the vision of creating this McConnell Center and enabling us to create incredible scholars. A big round of applause, please, for Scott Jennings, our own, who we get to see on TV and here. And of course, above all, please join me in thanking our alumna, a most gracious, incredible person, the director of the CIA, Director Gina Haspel. And Madam, please come up here, Madam Director here. We want to make sure that everybody who comes into your office knows that you are a UFL Cardinal. Please x-ray it, but we are very delighted to present this to you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much. You are wonderful.
Thank you.
And, ladies and gentlemen, let us all take away from today, Poli Poli. It's a good message for all of us, for all of the challenges we face. Nothing is too big if we have the patience, the expertise, and the courage, as we heard. Thank you all very much for joining us. And Gary, do I tell them that class is dismissed? All right, class dismissed. Thank you so much.